Right, we're looking ahead to the weekend's football. We're looking ahead to the Premier League. We're looking ahead to the WSL. And it's who you got. Delighted to say that Mick is here, Kathleen is here, Colm is here. Folks, you're all very welcome. We begin this every week by looking at the table and who's done well after the last round of predictions, which feels like an eternity ago at this point. So let's have a look on screen at where we're going first.
Go away.
Nathan, top of the table, 32 points. Sorry, and Will, also top of the table. They're joint top. Mick is creeping up behind them. You're like a shadow on Nathan and Will, just 3 points behind them, and then I'm 1 point behind you. So you're on 29, I'm on 28. Colm, way down bottom on 21, and Kathleen, you're keeping the wolf from the door at the moment. You're 1 point clear of Phil and Colm, who are at the bottom. What do you have to say for yourself, guys? I thought you guys were like the two best at this last year.
We were. That's why.
Why have you got worse
really,
at telling
really
predicting
annoying.
the future?
That was top 3 last year, was it?
It was top 3. It was you and Phil dodging it out for top place, and then me just always keeping up there. I was quite happy with my 3rd place finish.
Yeah.
I don't know, Owen, you ask me this every time I'm on, and
I expect
I'm
a reason.
running out of answers, I have to say.
How are the two newbies, the two promoted people doing, Owen and John? Owen's on a full-on, Fulham or one of those like surprise packages of the
John's
Premier
only
League.
3 points ahead, and
That's what you'd expect a promoted person to be, though. I think Owen being in 4th place at this stage of the season.
It is quite
and got
impressive.
promoted
Yeah,
to
my
championship.
lack of experience, getting used to the league. Like it's the physicality of the league is really the new thing that you notice.
you're
when you
just
make the
going
jump
in
up.
with wild abandon. You don't
Completely.
have, we're like the Cities, the Arsenals. We have, that chip on our shoulder of
Yes.
needing to do something, and instead we're just not.
You're being taught a lesson by the nouveau riche. So that's
You're the Nottingham Forest of
that's
this
it.
year.
I am Nuno. So that's the who you got table. After what are we 9 games into the season? Let's have a look at.
It's match day 12.
Is it
Not 9 who you got, so yeah.
9 who you got?
I think
Right.
maybe this is the 10th, I think.
Looking ahead to
Maybe
the
maybe it's
weekend.
the 11th, actually.
Sorry, this is the match day 10 table. Kathleen, you actually had a bit of a bounce back last week. You got 4 points on the board, as did myself and Nathan and Will. So that was the standard, it seems, at the top of the table. Colm, you got 3. Mick, you got 3 as well. So that is a roundup of where we all are with who you got. Let's have a look ahead to this weekend. We're going to start with Manchester City against Tottenham Hotspur. It's the 5:30 game on Saturday evening. It is the fixture of the weekend, and a game that has not been too easy for Manchester City in recent years, as Gerard Gilroy's prediction shows you there. He's going for a 2-1 Tottenham win. John is going for a draw. Nathan is going for a draw. All the rest of us are going for Manchester City wins. I think all of us in this room are going for similar-ish scorelines. We all think that Manchester City are going to score 3 goals, for example. Kathleen, do you want to kick us off on this one?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, City, much like Arsenal, it's been a tough season for them. But I just feel like there's something about having that international break, Pep signing a new contract. They're going to come back into this, and they're going to want to prove a point that they haven't been able to. I think they needed that break as a squad, because it almost got to the stage, where like siblings spend too long on a holiday together and everyone just gets like a little bit annoyed with each other. I felt like that's where City were getting with the way that the end of their the end of the run into the international window was going. And I think they're going to come back in and they're going to feel a bit happier with themselves. Spurs, obviously, they're 10th at the moment. They haven't had the easiest run, and yeah, I just think that all the signs are pointing for that this should be the start of the City revival that we see every season, and I don't think they're like Pep is going to let them flounder anymore.
Take that analogy one step further. Is there a case where the kids have been fighting because they thought Dad was leaving? Dad was going to run away in the middle of the night and leave his kids behind, but no, he's put pen to paper
Came
on a
back
new
with the
deal,
belt.
and you're just he's not going anywhere, kids. He's staying around.
They won't get away with that round here.
Do dads put pen to paper on new deals?
Yes.
Have you not done that already, Colm?
I mean, you'd want to be
You're getting on.
you want to be looking at your contractual situation there. You obviously both agree that this is going to be a Manchester City win this weekend. It's mad how a managerial sort of pen to paper moment can actually give us more confidence in how a team is going. Because if Pep hadn't signed a new deal this week, I suspect one or two of us might not have even gone for the scoreline. We might have gone for a draw potentially rather than a City win.
You have to remember that Spurs are an element in this conversation as well, and I just frankly don't trust them, and like they're, the second half against Villa, they were 1-0 down at half time, 1-4,
Talking about Villa.
and they were no, I'm not. No, I'm looking at it. This is nothing to do with Villa. This is they lost to Palace. They beat City in the League Cup, which we probably should come back to in a second. Then, like, unbelievable performance the second half against Villa. 1-4-1. You're thinking, right, they'll turn this around. Since then, they've lost to Galatasaray and Ipswich.
Yeah.
At home. Like, just Spurs. I can't see how they are going to. It comes down to me to City are in a bad run of form, Spurs are in a bad run of form, and I just trust Pep to figure it out more than I trust Postecoglou, and it's as simple as that, really. And the only thing that's making it close for me is that Spurs just have a way and a history over the last 4 or 5 years of playing City well. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't mean that they'll beat them. It doesn't mean they'll get results. So I've gone for 3-2, but it's a kind of a hedge of the bet. I really fancy City to win this game. They've lost 4 games in a row. It's unheard of. Pep Guardiola is too good a manager to not bounce back after a break, as Kathleen said, and win the 5th of those games. It's just it's just actually something I can't even countenance.
Yeah, it's a weird one because it did feel that there was some confusion about Tottenham before the international break. Obviously, his son wasn't fully fit and they had those situations where he was taken off early. And then what's happened to James Maddison this season? Why has he gone down in the pecking order, in the estimations of his manager so convincingly?
Has he?
Yeah, he's been playing.
He definitely.
Very limited
it's
minutes.
definitely more questionable if he's in their strongest 11. Whereas last season, you're like Maddison, they're in their top 3 players.
I would say he's not playing as well, but I think he plays if he's fit, Maddison. But I don't know. I think Maddison is a streaky enough player, and that's probably why he'll never be a regular England international. But on talent alone, as you well know, I'm a big Maddison fan.
Yeah,
I think he's one of the best midfielders in the league on his day. And they'll need him to be extraordinary against Man City this weekend.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to play though, because he's out of favour, because they've basically gone for Kulusevski's playing central, and you've got Brennan and Johnson and Son in the front 3 with Solanke, and Kulusevski's been playing in this new role, and he's replaced Maddison in that, in the way they've done it. So I don't know whether that's the right thing. I actually probably think I would persevere with Maddison and just say that you probably just need that bit of magic, and maybe you have Kulusevski and Johnson fighting it out for that right spot. But I think it is the way he's gone, Colm. It certainly seems to me, at least for now anyway. Now I could be wrong when the teams are named tomorrow,
but all the rumblings out of Spurs are that Maddison isn't the sort of player that Postecoglou wants, and he doesn't like how he plays, and he wants to get rid of him in the summer. So that kind of would lend itself to he's already planning that way ahead. That feels mad to me. There's been some stuff out of Maddison's camp around that as well.
Yeah, I don't think a club like Tottenham can afford to be letting players like Maddison leave. It definitely feels that quality-wise he should be in that starting 11, so I'm not quite sure what's gone on there recently. Granted, this is all biased towards the fact that Tottenham have had a fair few dodgy results this season. If they were winning every single game, you're like, wow, and they have Maddison still to come back to full form at some point this season. So if they win on Saturday night, I personally, I expect Maddison to start on Saturday night. If they win, then all of a sudden everything is rosy in the garden once again. We should bring in Lee Phelps from William Hill to the line. Lee, how are you getting on? I think we had a winner last time, which was a first for us this season.
Yeah, wonderful. 130. It was the score draw, wasn't it, in the Chelsea game? Yeah, it seems a long time ago now, doesn't it? With that, once an international break comes and goes, whatever happened before, I'm sure Pep will want them to do this, and Ange, just forget what happened before the international break. We start afresh from now, don't we?
Yeah, forget what happened in the international break as well. If we could possibly do that. So what are we looking at this weekend? And I think Manchester City versus Spurs might be one of the games that we're looking at.
Yeah, it's a really good Saturday, actually, isn't it? When you look, I think I was just looking before, and out of the top 10, there's only Liverpool and I think Newcastle not playing on the Saturday, so it's good. And there's lots to find out this weekend, not least this game. You know, we've got a top hacker. Before I mentioned that, the top hacker will be Arsenal to win at home, Aston Villa to win at home. It'll be Fulham to beat Wolves at home, and Rangers to beat Dundee United in the William Hill Premiership as well. So those 4 teams all to win at home in the 3 o'clock kickoffs at around 4-1. And you'll find that a little bit later on this afternoon. That's available. But yeah, Man City, Tottenham. Just been listening intently to what you guys have been saying, and problems on both sides. But the thing that really struck me as you guys were talking was that idea of if both of these teams are out of form or lacking a little confidence, I still want to be with Man City. Even without Rodri, I still think they've got more about them at home. Still got a fantastic home record, of course. You have to go way back to 2022 to find the last time they lost in the Premier League. And Tottenham, you just don't really know what you're going to get. The one thing with City, they're either consistently winning all the time or consistently losing all the time. So if they can arrest that slump, I'm with them. I've got to admit, the 2-1 on to beat Spurs, which I think is a little short. I'm not sure we want to be putting that up for our charity bet of the week. I do like City to win and both teams to score. I don't think even if you give them the edge, I don't think we can say that they're gonna nil Tottenham. Tottenham have got obviously plenty of quality players in their ranks. Son scored in the international break, and he scored in that 3-3 draw as well at the Etihad last season. So he's always likely to get on the score sheet, even from nothing. So, Man City to win and both teams to score is 11-8, which I don't mind that at all compared to 2-1 on. Haaland also had a great international break, didn't he? Scored in both games for Norway, obviously in fantastic form. I think it's 22 goals in 22 games for club and country this season. So even though he was bristling at Brighton when they lost that game, you could tell he was furious, couldn't you? Even though he scored. I'm not saying, put him in your bets by all means. If you're looking at a bet builder on this game, then Haaland probably has to go in it, whether it's shots on target or it's goals. But yeah, I think he'll lead the line, and I think he'll score in a City win personally.
Yeah, I like that 11-8. It is literally what we're all predicting this weekend. Yeah. Manchester City to win, both teams to score. Anything else that is catching your eye around the weekend, Lee?
Well, it's out on Sunday, but Ruben Amorim's first game in charge at Ipswich, of course. Ipswich beating Spurs in that game before the break, and that was their first league win of the season. Haven't been particularly great at home. I'm not sure Man United go there and win necessarily. I think he'd probably take a draw in his first game, but I'm just intrigued to see how they line up. And if Garnacho's come back from international breaking in good fitness and good spirits, then I think it'd be interesting to see how he uses him and uses that pace, because he's amongst all the doom and gloom from Manchester United fans, Garnacho, if you're thinking about leading the line, he's had a really positive season so far, and I think he could shape up really positively in this Amorim lineup with the pace that he's got. So I was looking at a bet builder around Garnacho, maybe getting shots on target. I think there's on the Ipswich side, been really impressed with Sami Smodic. Put him up to get shots on target against England in the international break. Didn't quite get it, but then the sending off really altered that game. Smodic has scored against City, against Spurs. He's got 3 goals this season in the league. I wouldn't be surprised to see him, even if it's a consolation, get on the score sheet. So really looking forward to that one, Ipswich versus Manchester United on Sunday. But yeah, let's go Man City to win and both teams to score against Tottenham for our bet of the week.
Brilliant. Lee, just one last thing before I let you go. I mean, it was obviously a terrible international break for Ireland on the pitch, but it was not a bad international break for Ireland off the pitch. Ireland getting their 3rd ever winner of the William Hill Sportsbook of the Year award. Connor and Ireland in the winners' enclosure. You guys are obviously the title sponsor of this at the moment, so just a quick word on that.
Yeah, fantastic. I had the honour and privilege of hosting the awards, actually. So I was right there when it was announced and interviewed Connor afterwards. Fantastic. If you haven't read the book, then it's obviously well worth a read. You don't win these things for nothing. And a fantastic story, from Connor's point of view, not only about the sport, and as someone who loves sport, but has never been good enough to be a sports person, finding out the kind of, the background to what happens in sports, like tennis, when he's talking about, the very best in the game, having, trained and practiced with the Williams sisters and played some of the greatest tennis players who've ever graced the court. But not just that, also the family kind of connections behind it and the trials and tribulations you go through to get to the stage where you're number 1 Irish tennis player. Then, yeah, absolutely fantastic. And, you guys, I don't know if you've met him, but what a guy, down-to-earth guy, just absolutely thrilled. Interestingly, without taking up too much more time, he obviously, tennis was his life. But he was an academic as well, and literature was also his life. And so it's fascinating that he's been through that whole tennis cycle and, counts himself among the 99% who don't make it, if you like. But here he is, literature, another part of his life, another phase of his life, and winning awards with literature. So yeah, fantastic. And his whole family was sadly his dad, who played such a huge role in not only his tennis but also his writing, is no longer with us. But his mum was there, and she was really emotional. His wife, of course, and his team behind him. So yeah, it was a wonderful afternoon and great to see. But all the shortlists were fantastic. 6 on the shortlist, some amazing books. So I'd recommend go out and find out all 6 of those. But yeah, make sure you put The Racket on your Christmas list.
Definitely. We might be a bit biased here, but I think you made a fantastic choice. Lee Phelps, thanks a million.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers. So we are looking ahead to the rest of the fixtures this weekend. So we've got Ipswich against Manchester United, which we'll get to in just a moment. We've got Arsenal against Forest and Chelsea against Manchester United in the WSL as well. Who you got is in association with William Hill. Remember, you must be over 18 and visit gamblingcare.ie for more information. Can you see, Colm Buig, Ruben Amorim lifting the Premier League trophy in a few years? I only ask this ridiculous question now because you've got this sort of amnesty. You've got this amnesty because if you get too carried away after the first couple of results, you'll almost look more foolish for reading too much into the first couple of results. So nothing on the table. Everybody who's listening, you know that there's no evidence here. So gut feeling, is this going to be the one?
Yeah, sure. Why not? I say that with confidence because I know we'll definitely forget this conversation in about 2 weeks' time.
Yeah.
So I'm absolutely committed to that. No bother at all. 4 managers since Matt Busby have won their first game in charge of Manchester United.
Wow.
Dave Sexton, David Moyes, Jose Mourinho, and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer.
Right.
None of which were massive successes. And then you look at Erik ten Hag, and his first 2 games in charge was the defeat at home to Brighton and then the hammering away to Brentford. And in those 2 games, Ten Hag played the system that he wanted to implement at United. And then in the third game against Liverpool, he changed it. He said, this isn't going to work with this group. Which then brings us along to Amorim's preferred 3-4-3 system. And only one team in the last 50 years of English top-flight football have won the league playing a back 3. And that was Chelsea in 2016-17 under Antonio
50,
Conte.
are we sure about that 50 years?
5-0. A regular back 3. Now, occasionally a team will revert to a back 3 in or out of possession, or maybe for a game or 2, but a standard back 3 in defence.
Wow, 50.
It's the first time.
So what happened
the only
50 years
time.
ago? There was a back 3 that won the top flight.
Sure.
Maybe probably just only count the back that far.
Yeah. And,
A nice round number, and they were like, yeah, that's good for us.
yeah, it's a 4 or a 5. And he switched when they were 3-0 down away to Arsenal at the Emirates. And then it was a season of the life of Victor Moses, a right wing back, and Marcos Alonso was on the other side. And Chelsea went on to win the league that year, when Pep Guardiola was only starting off. It was his first season. So Amorim would be doing a remarkable job.
So who is your Moses and Alonso then?
At the moment,
Yeah, for United.
it's difficult, isn't it? Because it would be like the returning Terrell Malacia, who has been videoed in training playing left wing back, and Shaw playing the left of the 3 centre backs. And most likely it's going to be Diogo Dalot. I wouldn't trust that Malacia's going to be fit anytime soon to actually start games. So it'd be like Dalot and Shaw.
Correct me if I'm wrong here, but that video that you referenced is like 7-minute training video.
Yeah.
Did someone say that Anthony was being positioned as a wing back in this video, or is this completely independent?
I don't know if that one, it was like the back 3 in the video were Evans, Yoro, and Dalot, I think.
So who's your right wing back in that
I
situation?
think it was Mazraoui.
Okay.
Yeah.
That would make sense.
And then the left wing back was Malacia.
Okay.
But the thing is, like, it won't really matter what personnel play at the moment in that 3-4-3 because he's going to change it.
But is he wedded to it? Is it like?
I don't know,
and
you see, but this is what we know of him do. See, he could do the same thing that Ten Hag did and said, this doesn't suit this team.
Because it doesn't. I don't think. And
Well, I don't know what will happen to Bruno Fernandes in this team, because I think he'd prefer to play width in the front 3 rather than 2 10s.
Yeah, and I just wonder, do you have to, like, I'm very impressed with Amorim so far. Like, I mean, there's the way he speaks, what he's obviously done in his previous job. I think this is, like, we don't know until it happens, as Owen points out. But
I think he's the one.
everything that looks like is like this is the perfect appointment for Manchester United. I would be a little bit worried if he's like, well, I can only do it if I can play 3-4-3. I understand you've got a way. It shouldn't. Style of play shouldn't even only be about your formation. You know what I mean? So if that doesn't suit this Manchester United team, and even then, maybe you find a different way. Maybe you find another way of doing things while you're waiting to kind of like sort things out over 2-3 transfer windows. You're not just going to do it all in January, certainly not, and even in the summer, you know. So I'd be interested to see, can he adapt?
Isn't part of Amorim's whole thing that if you can't explain it in one sentence and it's not clear enough and it's not simple enough for people to understand? But I think people saw that one line and they were like, oh, it's very simplistic. But to me, that's like you explain one thing one week in one line and everyone perfects that, and then the next week you add on to that and you keep adding those one lines until you get a team, which is why I think you're probably right in what you're both saying, in that I don't see him starting off straight away with what his preferred style of play is, because it wouldn't make any sense, because he couldn't explain to that United team in one line, here is exactly how you're going to play in this system that doesn't really suit the players that I have. It's not what you're used to. No one's won a title with it.
Although if he has trained that way all week.
Team. Yeah.
The one thing is, I'm glad he brought up Conte, because he's the one example. It's actually nothing to do with the back three, but that's one example of how footballers can be trained in the blink of an eye, where it's like, we're ripping up the entire system here.
We forget how good footballers are.
We're going to,
at
exactly.
This level, even the bad ones.
We're going to turn this whole thing on its head.
That was during a game as well, he did that.
I actually forgot about that until he mentioned it. I thought it was after the Arsenal game.
Half-time,
but it was at half-time in that game. And then they go and actually win the league. So they did it bloody effectively. Now, I do think he did have the players that were suited to it. And Conte, well, the similarity between Conte and Amorim is that, I mean, they were both very attracted to the back three, and that was it was kind of their philosophy, which maybe he betrayed his own philosophy a little bit, Conte, for the first 6 weeks of that season, or however long it was.
Possibly, yeah.
Longer than 6 weeks. It was about this time that season.
No, I think it was around September. It was early enough. Right. It was definitely sunny and nice.
Okay, it wasn't.
The thing is, it's interesting.
We weren't all swapping Lemsa.
The back three doesn't really seem to work when you want to win a league title in England. I don't know if there's too much emphasis on the wing backs, but I would expect Amorim to play 3-4-3 against Ipswich, because that's what you hired him for. You hired him for what he's done in the game so far, and look what he's done with 3-4-3. I think he'll play the system, and if the players can't adapt, that's their individual responsibility, and they're in trouble. There's going to be a load of good grace for Amorim for the rest of the season, unless he's a complete flop and they're losing like handily every game.
Did United not say the same, though, or United fans not say the same about Ten Hag? And then those first
what was Ten Hag's formation?
Came and there was like an absolute, but he was playing the style that he was hired to play. He was playing what he knew, and then, as you said, he swapped because that wasn't working, and it wasn't working with the players.
Yeah,
Miguel Delaney had a really good piece on it all today about all the different managers and what they went through and how they experienced that, like how they first experienced the furore of United fans and how they were prepared or not prepared for it. He was kind of saying that he thinks Amorim is prepared for it and maybe will stick with, his style of play a bit longer if he feels like he can, because he can handle everything else.
Amorim is impressive and Ten Hag isn't, and that shouldn't matter. But I think it matters massively. I think in terms of how he stands up to that, everybody turning on him. Everybody thought they'd give Ten Hag a chance, and then they just found him to be an unimpressive person.
But can I just make one thing on that? I agree with your kind of gut feeling that Amorim's going to work out. However, if we're comparing him with how unimpressive Ten Hag is, we can't compare him with what Ten Hag is and how we know him to be. We have to compare him with how he felt about Ten Hag after his first press conference.
Yeah, and I thought he came across as
quite positive.
Angry.
Oh. Right, I misremember that.
I remember he was just kind of like snotty.
Before Manchester United kicked the ball under Eric Ten Hag, I definitely do not remember anybody being like, "Oh, this guy's really unimpressive." So
maybe okay.
Before their team kicks the ball,
you're right about the perspective of he hasn't played a match yet.
It wasn't even the start of Ten Hag. It was like 2/3 of the way through his first campaign. People thought he was the one. They won the League Cup against Newcastle, and after the game, everyone was hanging on his word. Everything that he said was like, this guy's finally cracked it. And then the next week they went and lost 7-0 at Anfield.
Yeah.
Can I ask, though, before we move on, because we should stop at this game, what's cracked it for United now? Because so if Amorim is a success, and he is the one, as Eoin says, the structures at the club and the how far they've fallen behind and everything like that, and how far ahead City have got and so on, is like, what's deemed a success? Is it getting back to being competitive, or does he have to win the league?
Well,
and I don't mean next year.
But say he's a 2.5 year contract.
In 5 years.
He's a 2.5 year.
No, but say he does well, and in 5 years, and you're getting Champions League regularly and all. At some point, see, my point is, I don't think we're in a magic world where a manager can turn things around on their own anymore and just win a league. You know what I mean? Maybe it can happen, but I don't think it can be expected. I think more needs to happen at Manchester United than just hiring the right manager, the right coach.
Aston Villa's jump under Emery. Manchester, if you copied and pasted that to Manchester United, that should, in theory,
every step is harder.
Contending. I know, but that should, in theory, be contending for a Premier League until the last 6 weeks, a la Arsenal over the last 2 years.
Going from 15,
they should be looking at what Arteta did at Arsenal. That should be like, that's the level of success that we should realistically be able to expect by the last season of his contract, I think.
Yeah, well, it's a pretty short contract. in terms of a major hire at a big club.
But Arteta hasn't won the league. You'd be keeping him, wouldn't you?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So I think that's where United are now. I think United have to start thinking, United fans, for the time being anyway, have to start thinking of themselves as Arsenal level.
Well, it's proven
and not
that
out on their own on the top, you know?
The success of Manchester United is very hard to come by to make everyone satisfied, because they've won a couple of domestic cups under Ten Hag and it made very little difference medium term.
Yeah.
Very little. So you only have 2 trophies that you can win to impress people the world over. And they're 2 trophies that are not going to win anytime soon.
If he won a League Cup
elsewhere
this year and an FA Cup next year, and it wasn't littered with the farces that was going on at the rest of the, not being knocked out to Copenhagen in the Champions League and finishing way down the league and all, those they don't happen in a vacuum. You know what I mean? You win the cup, you play well every week, you're competitive, you're showing signs of improvement, you finish 3rd in the league. That cup matters a lot more than it did for Ten Hag.
The cup would be added on as a bonus, but it would all be about the league form. And like you rightly say, Ten Hag, like there was 13 examples last season of how bad it was under Ten Hag in the Premier League.
Should we have a look at what we're predicting for this game? It's Ipswich versus Manchester United on Sunday. It's a game you're going to hear live on Off the Ball. Nobody's going for an Ipswich win. Ger, John, Mick all going for draws here. Mick, you're going for a 2-2 draw. You're predicting probably the most exciting of all the different versions. I'm going for a 2-0 Manchester United win. Colm, you're going for a 2-0 Manchester United win. Kathleen going for a 2-0 Manchester United win. So we're all aligned. Let's have a look at the next game. It is Arsenal versus Nottingham Forest. I'd say this might have a few more mixed opinions. Oh, I stand corrected. Everybody here is going for an Arsenal win except for Ger, who's going for a 1-1 draw. Kathleen.
In the way that I said that, I feel like City were going to come back and have a bit of a bounce between the new contract and just having a bit of time away from each other. I don't think that's going to happen with Arsenal at all. I think the injury situation this season has affected them again, which is really frustrating. That it just shows, I think, the bit of the lack of depth sometimes within the squad, that whenever, the Odegaard being missing for that time, I know he's obviously like really crucial and a very, very hard player to replace, but I think it just shows again that when Arsenal have their fully fit starting 11, their title challengers take 1, maybe 2 people out of that, depending on who it is, and it all falls away. So I've gone for an Arsenal win here, but I actually wouldn't be totally surprised if it was a draw.
Are we all kind of making an extra allowance for the fact that Forest have already done this trick where they've gone to Anfield and they've won, and we're kind of thinking to ourselves, well, can't see this happen.
They were brilliant that day. They were brilliant. There was a superb performance, but I think we're overrating, I think your concern in terms of like picking who's going to win a game. It's Arsenal at home to Forest. They're in different leagues. It's Forest have been good this season, don't get me wrong. They were well beaten by Newcastle the last time. I'm not necessarily saying the bloom is off the rose. I think they'll probably still have a very good season and they'll surprise people as they go on. But Arsenal are in a different stratosphere if they play to anywhere near their potential. And they just are, and we have to just accept that. And you say you pick
It's a big
Forest.
If, isn't it? Their form has been poor.
But I thought they were good against Chelsea, I thought, for the most part. And I think they'll turn it around. They've had a couple of weeks. Their form has been poor. They've had some tough fixtures. They've been in random situations in matches a lot. I don't think they lose to Bournemouth if Saliba isn't sent off in the midway through the first half. I'm not saying they win that game either. I don't know. They weren't playing well. I completely accept that. But, you find yourself in those random situations. It was the same against Brighton. Rice doesn't get sent off in that match, it completely turns things in their head. Should they be collapsing in that situation? No. But I don't think they would have if they had 11 men. Do you know what I mean? So I think Arsenal's form is worrying from a title-winning perspective. I don't think it's as bad as crisis mode.
It doesn't make you think that they're not going to beat Nottingham Forest.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Colm?
Forest are unbeaten away from home this season. It's not just that Liverpool game, but I have a narrow Arsenal victory. And I think it will be largely unconvincing, but they'll get the job done. I could see a Kai Havertz type goal here. I would say, we were talking about this with Keith Tracy on breakfast this morning, who was an Arsenal supporter, and was saying, he's concerned with the lack of goal scorers. But the one thing we've gone from here is it's now 4 months uninterrupted until the next international break. The only thing that's got in the way and proved an obstacle so far for Arsenal is the inconsistency of the season, which you could quite rightly respond with. But that's the same for everyone. But it seems to Arsenal really haven't got into a rhythm. But I've been claiming all season that there's like a premature tension to do with Arsenal.
Yeah.
And I think Arteta is just, he seems to be taking it all like incredibly seriously, and there's not much levity going on around the Emirates because they were so close for the past couple of seasons. And I feel in pre-season he said to them, let's like no mistakes from the start here. We can't make any mistakes against this Manchester City side. We're going to beat them. And then you end up losing to Bournemouth and Newcastle.
And Manchester City end up fading away a little bit.
And does that contribute then to like an over the top reaction to how they played in the second half against City?
Everything's over the top with Arteta.
No, but do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, is it like that was like a good tactic that went too far and ended up then like they were just inviting so much pressure that it was just going to happen eventually.
Oh,
you know what I mean? Like it was like as if it was almost too much. Like there was they weren't even risking keeping the ball for 10 seconds, and passing it around them and just alleviating the pressure.
I think City being bad this season has just compounded Arteta into this like negative mindset that he, like, even the stuff at the start of the season about hiring the pickpocket or having the dog called Win, all these things. I think all the narrative around.
He's such a nerd, isn't he?
Which
did he have a dog called Win?
Yeah, it lives in Colney. And it like supports all the teams. So like the women's team and the men's team and the academy players, they all have, there's like a roster up on the wall and everyone has to take it for a walk like on certain days and things to promote bonding. I know, but calling it Win is a bit ridiculous. But I like, if you look at the narrative around Arsenal, it's like, oh, if City weren't there, Arsenal would have won the league. And then this year, City aren't really up there in the way that they have been, and they have finally slipped. And yet Arteta can't get things together enough to actually put in a challenge and go up against Liverpool. And so it just feels like everyone is panicking a little bit rather than, and I know there is the injuries, like as in we could go into this weekend and not have Saka, not have Trossard, not have Declan Rice. There's all the like long-term injuries that are still there as well.
With Arsenal, like, I mean, everybody gets injuries. I know the Odegaard thing really hurt, but like, I was gonna, when we were talking to Lee, like the list of Man City injuries at the moment is just.
But that's
off
my
the
point,
charts,
is that they have the depth that Arsenal don't.
They don't.
Manchester
So
City,
really,
Manchester
like
City
they're
injuries
collapsing. But
Manchester
nobody's
City
talking about their injury list. They're talking about Rodri. They're not talking about the fact that they've got 3 centre backs injured at the moment.
I don't know. I think Manchester City's injuries have been the most spoken about, and granted it is because of the one injury.
Yeah,
but like, I mean, Manchester City.
Arsenal's are the most talked about, and it's because it's coming from the club.
There's no way of.
It's because it's coming from.
There's no way of setting this debate. Obviously, what's the most talked about thing? But clearly, the Ballon d'Or winner doing his cruciate is obviously the biggest injury news and the most talked about thing.
I'm not having a go with Arsenal here. You guys are Arsenal fans. Do you not see that there's moaning coming from the top?
Yes,
about injuries.
I just said that
no way helpful.
I just said Arteta's always over the top.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. But the moaning about injuries is, and you guys repeating it, it's in no way helpful. You know what I mean? You have to. I talked about this in the show.
If we stopped
next
moaning,
man up is the way
Kathy
managers
stopped moaning, Arsenal would get better results. That is 100% clear fact. The last game is.
Owen doesn't like this, does he?
What?
Doesn't want to be challenged on Arsenal.
Oh, come on. What do you want to challenge me on? I don't like to be challenged on Arsenal.
He's dropped his pen for the radio listeners.
What am I not accepting being challenged on?
This? What are you getting so annoyed for?
Well, I'm not getting. I'm starting to get annoyed because you're telling me that I'm getting annoyed. I'm genuinely not annoyed.
Okay.
What's like? What do you think I'm getting defensive about?
I think your tone, your general pitch went up when I said that there was too much moaning going on from Arsenal fans and Arsenal management.
when you said that Arsenal are the most talked about injuries, we literally had a conversation on the show about the calendar and players being indentured slaves after the Rodri injury. The Rodri injury is the biggest injury news in world football and the most spoken about news to do with an injury of a player.
Off the top of my head at the moment, City are also missing Diaz, they're missing Stones, they're missing Akanji, they're missing Nunes, they're missing Grealish, they're missing Doku, they're missing obviously Rodri, they're missing
De Bruyne has been
at least 2 or 3 more. At least 2 or 3 more. I don't
Oscar
have
Bob.
my head. Oscar Bob is an important one that was supposed to come through this year. That's a lot more than just like Saka might or might not play and Declan Rice is playing through a broken toe.
But why are you saying that I'm like? Why, I don't understand your point in terms of what I'm getting defensive about. That's all true.
But what I'm saying is we talk about Rodri's injury a lot, but everyone has injuries, and Arsenal, we hear more about Arsenal's injuries, I think, given their perspective, given their compared to what everybody else has. I feel like we hear about them more.
But what's that got to do with what we're saying here?
I also did admit at the start that like
Kathleen started talking about the injuries and how we
no,
Arsenal
but
have
I
gone
admitted
apart.
at the start that that's a failure of Arsenal, that they can't get over that like that's a thing that they can't deal with, and that they should be able to deal with, and Arteta should be able to like mix up the system a little bit more so that it doesn't have as big as an impact. But that's what has done Arsenal.
And mentality-wise, shouldn't be talking about it, because it shouldn't be telling players that they've an excuse that, you know, things are falling apart because we don't have our best guys.
Yeah.
Personally, I think.
Well, I
not
think
against anybody.
Like, I think Arsenal have been terrible for large swathes of the season, and I'm not sure where our defensiveness has actually existed.
But they were. I mean, they were much better against Chelsea with Martin Odegaard back.
Yeah.
I mean,
Odegaard
they were.
makes a huge difference.
They were. I mean, Odegaard he's nearly a unique player in the Premier League. That's how much of a difference he makes to sides.
Let's go to Chelsea versus Manchester United in the WSL. 2 unbeaten sides. Chelsea, 10 wins in a row. At the moment, everybody here is going for a Chelsea win. Mick going for a 4-1 is probably the biggest of the wins. Certainly the most goals for Chelsea predicted in this one. Kathleen, Bompastor is better than Emma Hayes. Discuss.
I think that Chelsea were in the same place that Liverpool were at the end of last season with Jurgen Klopp, in that Klopp came in, revolutionised the club. Emma Hayes came in, absolutely revolutionised Chelsea and how they operated in a much like deeper way than any men's manager ever could, because of the very, very low bar that she started from, which was just getting them training tops and all that sort of stuff. But you could see that Chelsea were dragging themselves through the last couple of seasons. They were still winning and they were still getting the WSL title and everything else, but there was a tiredness about the club. There was a tiredness about Emma Hayes, and I think everyone needed something new, and there was a few players that needed to move on as well that had extreme loyalty to Emma Hayes, and Emma Hayes had extreme loyalty to them. And Sonia Bompastor has come in, breath of fresh air. It's not that she's massively changed up a whole lot of things. She's just been able to get more out of these players, I think, this season. Chelsea looked like they played City at the weekend, and everyone was like, this is the game of the season. This is what's going to decide the title. It'll either be 0-0 and the two teams will like just totally bed in against each other, or it'll be a score fest, or Chelsea will run away with it. Those were basically the three options, and it ended up being it was very even until like the 70th, 80th minute, and then Chelsea just managed to get 2 goals with the pure skill they have in that team. And not to bring it back to injuries and trigger anyone or anything, but like when you look at the players that Chelsea are missing and still have to come back, it's absolutely like Lauren James isn't playing at the moment. One of the best young players in the world right now. Sam Kerr, we haven't even mentioned her since she did her ACL, because Chelsea have not missed her.
We never talk about injuries.
I know.
I don't think there's anything wrong with talking about injuries, by the way. But anyway, that's the
but you have like
classic misunderstanding. But anyway,
Ramirez, Ridden Canyard coming in there. Some of the younger players are performing to the heights, and they just look like an unstoppable force. And if they can win Champions League this year, I think they're pretty. I know it's very, very early on, but unless something goes awry, I'd be very surprised if they didn't win the title. If they can win Champions League, I can imagine Emma Hayes will be fuming that Sonia Bompastor managed to do in her first season with the team that Emma Hayes built.
United are pretty good, though.
Yeah, they're unbeaten, but they've drawn 3 of the last 5.
I watched United against Villa last Sunday night, and when I say it was the worst game of football I've ever seen,
it was terrible.
I actually can't even begin to describe how I'm not exaggerating. Kathleen will tell you it was awful. There was the ball was never in play. It was terrible. And I'm just looking at United's results here. They've won 4 and drawn 3. Good start to the season. Only conceded 2 goals. They played nobody. They played Arsenal, who were in crisis at the time, and drew 1-1 with them at home. So
crisis?
This is a completely different. This is a completely different test. This is a completely different
the
test.
The ball was never in play. The game's still going on. Like they can't finish the game.
There was honestly, there was 10 minutes of injury time that took about 14 minutes, and I'm kind of double screening every time I'm watching. Because I watched the NFL, I watched that, and every time I looked at the screen, it was a throw.
No, but they're tough to score against United.
They are.
I think it's only Lyon in the top 5 leagues that have.
But Chelsea, they only conceded 2 goals.
As few, yeah.
Chelsea have, after 7 games, have a goal difference of plus 22.
Yeah.
I can't begin to describe how much I'm not exaggerating that this was my favourite episode of Who You Got of all time. Guys, thank you very much for your company. Emma was shaking her head profusely when I said that Manchester United are good at football. Their women's team, so I think I stand corrected on that. I should have predicted United to get something off Chelsea this weekend and put my money where my mouth is. So everybody went for a Chelsea win, basically, is the bottom line. Folks, we'll see you next Friday. Enjoy the weekend. Bye bye for now.